Hello and welcome to lesson 1 of week 3. In this lesson, we are going to look at how to group data in MySQL. My name is Mildred. So first of all, we're going to establish a connection for the demo. When we want to group data in MySQL, we use a group by clause written group by like this. What this does is that it groups a set of rows and then return one row for each group. Let's take a look at the film table, for instance. The film table contains data and returns 1000 rows of record. We have the film ID, the title, description, we have the release year, language ID, original language ID, the rental duration, the rental rate, the length, the replacement cost. So let's take the rental duration as our column of interest along with the film ID, and let's try to illustrate how to group this data so that we want to see how many movies have a particular rental duration. So that is a use case that might not be practical in real life, but it just shows you how to use the group by clause. So normally you get something like how many customers paid a particular amount, or how many customers rented a particular movie, and something like that. So let's say we want to select just the film ID column and the rental duration column, and we want to group all of this by the rental duration so that we can get the number of movies that belong to a particular duration of time where a customer can actually rent or keep the movies after rental. So I will do select film ID, and I also want rental ID, and this is going to be from film, and I'm going to add the clause group by, and we are going to be grouping this by the rental duration. So how do you know which column to group by? You want to group, this is not rental ID but rental duration. So you want to group your column by the column in which you want to keep without aggregating. So in this case, we want to return the duration of the movies intact, but we want to group the film ID. So what we do is to get all of the film ID and group them together as a total number, and then keep the rental duration column and just aggregate the film ID column. In this case, we need an aggregate function called count. And so it's going to count the number of film IDs that are returned under a particular rental duration. I don't know if that makes sense, but that is the logic to know what column you are going to group by. So let's run this to see if all is well. The movies that the customer can keep for 3 days are 203 movies. So things like that. So this is the general idea where you can use to group data. You can also return aggregate numbers. You can also use the has keyword to alias what is returned. So instead of having count film ID, you want to have has number of movies, and so this will rename that column to number of movies, so it makes it more understandable. So let's try to do something like get all the amount spent by each customer in rentals. And for us to do this, we will have to use the payments table to see what it holds. So let's say select all from payments. So let's see what this holds to see what the column of interest will be. So we have payment ID, customer ID, and amount columns here, and the amount and the customer ID column will be the best column of interest. So what we can do here is to say we want to select just the customer ID and the amount from payment table, and we want to group by the customer ID, because now it's the customer ID we want to group, and we want to have an aggregated amount for each customer ID. So group by customer ID. So but before we can aggregate, we want to get the sum of the amounts for each of the customer. So I'm going to put this sum in uppercase since it is a function. So we are selecting customer ID. We want to select the sum of the amounts. We'll say has amount, as total amount, let's say. So you can give your column any new name when you use the has to alias the column returned. So we want to select the customer ID. We want to aggregate and get the sum of all the amounts that a customer spent, which means we are grouping by the customer to get the amount of each customer. So let me run this to see if all is well, and we should have a column of customer ID and total amount like this. So this is how we use the group by clause to get things done. Another thing we can do is we can use a different statement, saying like having the having statement, where we specify a filter condition for the return set. So now we have grouped this. We have customer ID 118.60 cents. We have customer ID 4, for instance, having $81.78. Let's say we want to return only those that have spent above $100. We will use a having clause like this to create that filter. So for instance, we can say select customer ID, sum of amount has a total amount from payments, group by customer ID, and then we're going to add having, then we add the filter condition for the result set. So we want to say having the total amount greater than 100. So this way we shouldn't see customer ID 4, customer ID 6, customer ID 9, 8, 9, 10, and so on this table. Now we have 599 rows returned from this query, and when I run this, we should have less number because it has filtered out all of the customer ID that have spent less than $100. So we only have people who have spent above $100. So this is how we use the group by clause with the having clause. We can also have two conditions, like having total amount greater than 100 and another condition. So this is the way we can do this. We have more complex ways. When you play around with this, you'll be able to do that. And so this is where we end this lesson. In summary, we looked at how to group data together to filter the result set and return aggregate information. We also look at how to filter those result sets using the having clause. In the next lesson, we're going to look at how to use subqueries to work with multiple tables or to work with different kind of conditions. And all of these are very important concepts you have to understand before you start building the back end of your software development project. Thank you, and see you in the next lesson.